to all the listeners and my fellow AvGeeks. As we begin the second episode of Airworthy Talks, we have with us the very dynamic Rakesh Dhannarapu, the author of 101 Flying Secrets, probably the only manual for flying passengers. Now, Rakesh has been on this enriching voyage in aviation that includes everything starting from aircraft engineering, pilot training, safety management, and most recently, authoring a book. Rakesh has further reached more than 1,000 plus budding high school students through his aviation talks that has helped explore all potential work opportunities in aviation. I am so excited to begin this podcast right away. Very good evening to all our listeners around the world. Very good evening, Rakesh. Welcome to the second episode of Airworthy Talks with Udan Aviation Academy. We are glad to have you with us. How are you doing today?
Hi, Shubhashish. Thank you for having me on the podcast. And this is my first, and I really hope to reach out a larger audience through your medium, as well as all the aviation geeks that are out there who are listening to different sorts of podcasts. I'm doing really great. And how about you?
Just doing fine in this pandemic. We are currently riding the second wave, but the best thing about this pandemic is that it has opened a world of horizon as to how we communicate as persons with each other. And one of the mediums through which we are currently sort of speaking with each other and also will be connected with our viewers is via the voice, which is the podcast. And that is where we would like to sort of hear more from you as an individual. So Rakesh, just talk me through about your journey, because as I read more and more about you on the internet, I get more and more fascinated. So from an aviation guy to now a book author, just walk me through what is your journey.
I think to start with, I have to say that my journey in aviation has been one with a lot of turbulences. And I think that is what keeps everyone alive and even the journey alive as well. So it started off in my early childhood days when I was in my schooling. When I came back home, there was a lot of things that people would do. Most of the children of my age group would either watch different sorts of cartoons or movies, but then I was completely addicted into different engineering shows or air crash investigations and all of that kind of series on National Geographic Channel and Discovery channels. And from there it started. That is where it all began. And then my personal interest into this matter of aviation started then. And then when a point came in my life where I had to choose a different a path for myself in terms of education, somehow there was a innate feeling within myself that said, if I have to do anything, it has to be with aviation. And that is how I picked up my mathematics, physics, and chemistry in my plus one and plus two. I pursued that. And then I only appeared for institutions that held different courses within aviation alone. So I wrote my competitive exams in different private and government colleges. And then I aerospace engineering at the SRM University in Chennai. And after securing my position at SRM University in Chennai, my 4 years of aviation aerospace journey started, and it was completely technical. And, it was, really tough to go through that. And after that thing, my objective was always to get into piloting after that. And I got into Asia Pacific flight training. So that is where a twist of fate actually happened when I was transitioning from my engineering bachelor's into my piloting career. I had a small health issue for which, I was misdiagnosed, and it was followed by a subsequently unnecessary surgery, I must say. And after that, my complete life took a head upside down approach. So I started out with my Asia Pacific flight training. After my surgery, I completed 950 hours of my training as a commercial pilot on ground training. And when I was actually appearing for a class 1 and class 2 medicals, the surgeon who actually performed the surgery on me, he was refusing to give me a cure certificate, which was pretty much important for me to get through my class 1 and class 2. It's kind of puzzling that, he promised that he would give me a cure certificate before the surgery, knowing that, I'm getting into aviation as well. But things didn't work out. And then after getting to that point of stage in my piloting career, then I had to stop by because I couldn't proceed further. But I knew, despite the setback there, that I'm still associated with aviation. And if at all, if I'm doing anything in my life, it is aviation itself. So having that determination, I pursued my master's in aviation, specializing in safety risk management and airworthiness at Royal Melbourne Institute of Technology in Australia, Melbourne. And it was a epic journey, to be frank, because the world of aviation started opening up when I actually went there for my master's. And during that certain period of 2 years when I was pursuing my master's, there was a 3 months break that I came across. And that is when I actually decided to come back to India for a break. And I was thinking, what do I do then? Because during my bachelor's, whenever I used to get a 1 month break time, I used to go out there into the industry, ask my father's help in kind of getting some kind of connections in the industry and fetching an internship for myself and putting myself into that shoes of different person, for example, an aircraft maintenance engineer or a design engineer or something like that. And I had all such sort of experiences, but right now I was craving for a different experience, and that is when the idea of writing a book actually came through. And within that first 3 months period of time, I scripted my first manuscript. It was a full-time job, starting from 9 a.m. until 9 p.m. in the night. And after endless amount of coffees and all of that, the first manuscript came through. And then I moved back to Australia, continued my education. And while I was continuing my education, the pre-publishing work of the book happened. And so after 3 months of writing and then 6 months of pre-publishing, after a total of 9 months, I have my baby, my book out right now. So the 101 Flying Secrets actually came into the market in 2019 when I was a 23-year-old student back then. So that was my journey with the aviation.
Wow, really, really exciting and inspiring at the same time. I can see there is so much of diversity which you have gone through within the facets of aviation industry. So right from engineering to flying to later on safety, and within that you have sort of transformed yourself as an author at the same time as well. I mean, I would like to talk more about your book, but I would rather sort of save it for the later part. But it's something which we all have as AvGeeks in us, that there is this source of passion and source of inspiration within us which drives us to excel within the industry, no matter how tough the situation is and no matter how harsh the situation is. Like what I can see in your case is that I'm sure that it will be quite heartbreaking for you when you didn't got that class 2 medical certificate cleared. That might be really heartbreaking for you, but you didn't give up. You actually went on to sort of explore the other facets of aviation industry, and here you are hitting the roof with practically plethora of experiences within the aviation industry. And that is something which I also would like to tell all our listeners, that giving up is not an option in aviation. Whenever you are married in aviation, it's like marrying a wife and there is no divorce in aviation. You cannot go to someone else. That is how it is. And you had various experiences obviously so far in the aviation industry, but one of the important experience which I would like to sort of ask you is your flying experience. So what was your first flying experience? We all flew. I still remember my first flight as a child. So what was your memory?
I think the first flying experience is one of the most unforgettable experiences that you'll ever have in your life. I think the very situation that my father said we are going to X place on an aircraft and I'm booking the tickets for it was itself a situation where I had to go and tell everyone that I'm traveling in an aircraft in few days to come. So I think it was back in my 6th grade or 7th grade when I actually took my flight first. Back then, all the tickets, airline tickets, used to look like a checkbook. And
Right.
yes, that's right, multiple pages and all of them. And it was back in those days, it was a time when they used to give you a lot of goodies, chocolates, toys, and most importantly, people would actually recollect the Kingfisher Airlines earphones as well.
Right.
So a lot of such stuff. And every passenger back then felt like a premium passenger, a passenger who's entitled to a lot of comforts because of the full service carrier mentality that was predominant in India and other parts of the country as well. But later on, as things started going towards the LCC model, the low cost carrier model, things started becoming completely different. This works well on the aircraft revenue management systems, but it becomes a hassle for the customer. So we are here right now. But then back in those days, on my first experience, the gravity defying takeoff to the kiss perfect touchdown, those are the sort of things that no one can actually forget.
Right. You talked about revenue management, and that is what something which makes the bread and butter for airlines around the world. So there is this general quote saying that love is in the air, but for revenue managers, it is love is in the fare. That is how that is how they see it.
Absolutely right.
Right. And you talked about, flying when you were in your sixth grade. I'm sure that when I was in my sixth grade, flying was like a very posh experience within itself. We used to like dress very formally before flying because it was considered to be like in those days
Luxury.
it was considered to be a absolutely right. It was a luxury, and we all like dressed like we are going out on a meeting, and then that's how it is. But flying from the early 2000s to what it is, it has absolutely turned upside down. You mentioned about LCCs coming into picture. Airlines like Indigo, SpiceJet, Go Air, they have democratized air travel in India.
Yep.
But with growing number of these airlines, it's a good thing that with this growing number of flights, we have got growing number of first time flyers as well in India. But
Yep.
with that comes the fear factor within them. People are still scared of flying, or people are not aware about the different facets of flying. So what problems do you think that people nowadays face when they are flying?
I think that's absolutely right, Subhashish, because with the introduction of the UDAN regional connectivity scheme in India, a population which was looking at different modes of travel apart from air travel is now looking up to the skies and looking up to connecting towards different tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 cities as well. So when you have the first time flyer coming in, the biggest factor that becomes that comes into play is the general passenger etiquette. The general etiquette, for example, let us talk about deboarding of an aircraft per
Right.
se. Once the aircraft stops, everyone starts rushing out. In India, everyone starts rushing, but nobody knows why they're rushing.
Absolutely.
That is
Yes.
one factor that I predominantly see all the time when I fly. And the second thing is, a basic thing like when the cabin crew ask you to put up the window shades of the aircraft open before a takeoff or before just landing, people don't even comply with that thing. So these are the small things that I always see as a problem. I would rather say it's a cause of concern rather than a challenge. So those are the two aspects I generally see as a passenger, which are a cause of concern.
Right. It's equally because the first time flyer is not aware about how things are to be done. I mean,
True.
one of the common elements which I pick up while flying, like you mentioned, like about blind shades or the boarding deboarding part of the journey, people are also confused, like on certain aspects, like whether or not they will be receiving a free meal on board. Because for us, we are aware that it's a LCC, so meal is
Yeah.
not an option. But people, they generally see in the movies on, and from there the first time flyer pick. So you know what, I've paid for the ticket, and I've seen that in the Shah Rukh Khan movie, that this beautiful air hostess was serving food on board, and all of a sudden, where is my food? The guy next to me is eating, but I am not getting a meal. So these are again common things which I generally pick up as well, and this is where a lot of enlightenment also needs to take place, and this is where you actually come into the equation. So you
Absolutely.
have you have actually written this virtual manual for flying passengers. So where did you find this need of writing a manual or a SOP for a flying passenger?
Yeah, here I would like to address why a manual kind of a thing is required for the passengers. Firstly, we all know that, being in aviation industry, we all know that flying is a safety critical activity. That is point number one. And the second thing is millennials are a generation of 5Ws and 1H. They need to know what, where, when, why, who, and how in order to comply with different sorts of regulations that come with air travel. So that is point number two. I mean, also being a part of the industry and having all sorts of exposure, we all know that everything within aviation functions in accordance to standard operating procedures or manuals or guidelines and all of that. But when you see in the entire history of commercial aviation, every organization has some or the other sort of a book or a checklist for technical aspects of flying or operations, but no one has put up a passenger friendly version of that in order
Right.
for passengers to have the know-hows of flying. Because once they start knowing the reason behind why something is done, that is when the compliance would actually improve. Only when a person knows that, if they don't wear a helmet and drive on the road, they might get hit by something and they might be dying out of a severe head injury. Only then will they actually wear a helmet. Despite that, a few people in India don't wear it because that is how the safety culture here is. Unfortunately,
Exactly.
this kind of a safety culture also becomes contagious and passes into different sorts of professions as well. So that is another aspect of it. And lastly, I mean, the very premise of writing this book called 101 Flying Secrets comes from the fact that an informed passenger, a well-educated passenger, is always the safety asset for any airline, because lower the number of unruly passengers, the better, the safer, and the efficient the operations of an airline is. So that is the premise on which this book is based on.
Right, absolutely right. And talking about a couple of etiquettes,
Yeah.
specifically in this pandemic, we see DGCA making strict regulations about people who are not wearing mask on board, or not wearing the shield which has been given to them.
Yeah.
This actually comes from the day-to-day habits which we pick up, or which passengers
True.
generally pick up. If they are not aware
True.
to sort of take care of that while they are in a social gathering, or while they are in public places, they tend to reflect the same out there. So these
Absolutely.
etiquettes which you have sort of discussed now and also in your book is greatly important. I feel the same. But why can't you just go and tell people about, what, these are the etiquettes you need to follow? Or you can just make a video and just tell the world that, what, these SOPs you need to follow. SOPA, you make sure you board properly, put down your seat belts properly, and so on and so forth. Why a book? Why a book, Rakesh?
I think if videos could actually solve everything, then I think we would have videos of all sorts. But unfortunately, people don't want to be lectured. Rather, people have to be. I mean, it's like it should be an involving exercise for them as well. It should be both information as well as entertainment and infotainment kind of a thing. So that's the reason why this book comes into play. It's not just for informing passengers, but it is also informing and entertaining passengers. I'll tell you how. Because the question, I mean, the book explores questions like, if aircrafts are actually safe, why do we even wear seatbelts? Why do we always see aircrafts painted white in color? Or, what is an airport curfew? So this book comes in a coffee table format, exploring all such different questions that boggle a passenger at the airport or in an aircraft, with a question and an answer format. With that, on the left hand side, you always have imagery which is relevant to the question. So what I have done with this book is that, keeping the magnitude of aviation in mind, I put up videos embedded in a QR code so that when actually passengers go through this demystified explanation of that question there, they can scan the QR code, they can virtually go and watch that video live. And that is when they actually start getting the first-hand feel of what aviation is, or what things happen behind the screen within the aviation operations. So that is where this book comes in. And the price point of this book is way less than a flight ticket. So,
Right.
essentially a passenger, when purchasing this book, which is less than an average flight ticket, gets to know what a passenger actually needs to know about aviation. This also helps them understand and appreciate aviation in a different way. So that was the intention why we had to come up with a book, because book is an eternal thing. No matter
Right.
how many ever Kindles, podcasts, anything comes up, there is a possibility for that to die out, because if you run out of battery, you can't hear that. But
Right.
in case of a book, it never dies, right? It keeps getting passed on, and that's how the knowledge is transmitted to the people as well. So that's
Right.
the whole idea.
Absolutely right. And the tangible feeling of you holding a book
Yeah.
and reading what is to be done and what not is to be done is actually much better. And you have actually addressed the thing in the rightful manner. If you look at the attention span of current generations, it's
Yeah.
into seconds. And that is
Absolutely.
equally evident when we read as well. So when you have put infotainment in it, when you have put QR codes which talks about, oh, you know what, this is what I'm reading and this is what it is to be done, it
True.
sort of makes the book much more entertaining. So a very wonderful thing which you have done out there.
Yeah.
Now, I was just picking on, you mentioned about you have written a lot of secrets in your book. Your book itself says
Yeah.
101 Flying Secrets. Now, to our viewers, listening currently to us, what is that one secret would you like to share to all our listeners now? What is that one flying secret which you want to share?
I think I would be rather interested in sharing two than one itself.
Yeah.
So the first things first, whenever I ask anyone which country do they think has the highest amount of female pilots in the world, everyone goes out naming first world countries like USA or UK. But unfortunately, those are the countries that are way behind India, because India takes the number one position in having the highest amount of female aviatresses in the world. So that's a secret that actually not many people know, and that's a beautiful thing for our country to have as well. And secondly, aircraft has so many seats, but everyone is wondering which is the safest seat in an aircraft.
Right.
Definitely, with no amount of certainty can you pinpoint at one seat and say this is the best and the safest seat. But apart from that, there has been a lot of research that has been gone into this thing. People have actually done experimental crashes, and they have actually verified information that, when a person sits in the last aisles of the aft part of the aircraft, or the tail part of the aircraft, and takes up a middle seat instead of an aisle or a window, the chances of him surviving a deadly crash and walking away from the crash without any serious injuries is higher compared to any other person. So this is another secret, just in case if you're about to book a flight ticket, always aim for the tail end of the aircraft and go for a middle seat instead of a aisle or a window seat. That is what I would like to inform all the listeners of the podcast.
Wow, that's like really eye-opening, because that's the least entertaining seat which you want to have, right in the aft section of the aircraft, and that too in the middle. And
But
if
if you want
you
to bolster your survivability of a crash, when your luck is completely out of the thing, then I think that's the perfect seat.
absolutely, and if you look at low-cost airlines, that's the seat which is always free for to take.
Absolutely
so,
right.
so this is something. So it's safety with not much burden on your pocket. You can absolutely get it for free if you're flying with any airline. That's a very good secret. And to all our viewers listening to it now, Rakesh has told about two secrets. The remaining 99 is something which you need to go out and read the book and sort of explore it more and more. Talking about safety, it's equally important that, like an aircraft maintenance engineer makes the aircraft airworthy and makes it fit for flying. Similarly, for our fellow AvGeeks and the upcoming generation of aviation students, or currently for those who are working in the industry, what, according to you, can make them airworthy within the aviation industry?
I think when we talk about the very aspect called airworthiness, in a technical manner, when we talk about airworthiness of an aircraft, it is basically three different parts. When the configuration, the role, and the environment of operation of the aircraft changes, that is when the question of airworthiness of an aircraft kicks in. So if I have to draw a tangent and give three different pointers with regards to what makes a person airworthy, I would definitely say this all the time. The first one being in aviation, it's never the load that breaks something down. It is how you carry it. When you look at the aircraft, how big it is, and when you look at A380, it's hard to believe that such a metal bird even flies. But it's not the load that is breaking down the aircraft, but it's how you handle the load. And that's the first thing that I would say. So life is always overwhelming, and the most important part is to look through the secret order in the chaos of life. And that is one thing which I would say. Secondly, in aviation, one simply cannot give up. That is how aviation is built. Just imagine your pilot announcing, ladies and gentlemen, there is an emergency on board the aircraft. I'm unable to mitigate it. I give up. How do you even feel hearing such kind of a thing? So therefore, it is important to understand that a complaining mind is never peaceful and never a part of the solution. So that is the second aspect that I would like to share with the listeners. And the third aspect being aviation is full of black swan events, just like we had a global crisis shutdown, and then we have a lot of groundings of aircraft due to the pandemic and all such kind of things. This is a frequent occurrence that keeps happening every now and then in aviation. So that is not a big thing. But it is important for one to remember that, they have to be persistent enough to actually tear through the odds that they naturally come across in their journey in aviation, just like an aircraft does when it is passing through the sound barrier. It is actually breaking the sound barrier and going to higher speeds like supersonic and hypersonic. So you have to be persistent enough if you want to go higher, achieve higher. And this will also give a person their own space within their profession, and it also gives them a proper expression. So there is no manner in which a pilot or a engineer has to perform his duties. But once with that kind of a determination, he breaks through all the odds that he comes across in his career. He finds his own expression. For example, there is a recent SpiceJet video that was being circulated on the internet. So here the pilot actually makes a funny passenger announcement before the flight takes off. Where does this thing come from? When you love your job and you're willing to go to any extent, that is where things like this come up. And I think these are the three important aspects that I would always suggest anyone if they have to be airworthy.
Absolutely. Can't agree more to that, Rakesh. And definitely, it's an industry which demands you to be resilient. It's an industry which demands you to cope up with the dynamics of it. It's pandemic. It's all of a sudden there is a volcano which has erupted, or there is a tsunami somewhere. There is a war somewhere. This industry modifies itself. Morphs itself depending on the situation, and it has come out from very huge crisis previously, and pandemic is no different. And I'm sure to all our viewers, to all our listeners, you might be sort of upset with what has been going now currently with this pandemic, but it is just a matter of time. I mean, Rakesh, you yourself have got so many destinations to sort of travel, or unfulfilled travel wishes in the last year or so, and moment we get an opportunity, we will be out. I'm sure that you will have a couple of them. Yeah.
I think, as I previously explained during the introduction of my part in this podcast, I said my journey in aviation has been one of numerous turbulences. To add to this thing, when my dream of becoming a pilot shattered actually, and I chose to go to Australia to do my masters, I was suffering from depression. But despite suffering from depression and being treated for it, I broke through that setback with this book. And after breaking through that setback and finishing my masters, that is when I actually secured a job as a reliability engineer with Jetstar Airlines, which is a subsidiary of Qantas. But again, once I was offered that job, the pandemic came in. So you see how life plays along, right? Despite all the odds right now, after even having an offer, I'm unable to do my job. So the offer is put on hold. I'm here. I'm trying to spread the message of aviation. So this is how you build up resistance, and this is how aviation is all about. If you're determined and if you stick like a stamp on the envelope, you just reach the destination where you're meant to be.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. And definitely, it's about thinking positive, thinking that good things will happen to you. And it's about acting in a way in which you don't let yourself down. You always keep on looking to do things within the industry itself, so that you are not breaking the link with the industry and also with yourself. Rakesh, brilliant, brilliant talk so far, but let's make it much more spicy, or rather, I'll say, let me make it much more difficult for you. So, as a part of what we do in our Airworthy Talks, we do what is called as a rapid fire, and I'll be asking you, a couple of questions. There is no explanation to it. You just have to sort of select which one you like and which one you don't. So, talking about flying itself, my first question to you is, would you rather prefer to fly with a low cost airline or with a full service airline in the domestic market?
No doubt, I'll go with the full service airline.
Okay, so you like the meals and all the luxuries on board.
Absolutely, yes.
Right, right. The second question is for a true AvGeek. There is this year-long dilemma and decades of tussle between the two major manufacturers. So which one will you choose, Boeing or Airbus?
Blindly Airbus, man. Yeah.
So you are an Airbus guy.
People would be surprised that I'm not going with Boeing, but then for me, I think it has always been Airbus for me.
Right. So the next one is quite futuristic. So if given the opportunity, would you like to fly in an AI-driven pilotless aircraft?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, see, if we wouldn't have believed computers for what they have done, we wouldn't have been here with this current aviation. So I think we have to trust the technology that's upcoming, and I would definitely go with it.
Right. So, unmanned flying is something which you are okay with, right?
Absolutely.
That's good to hear. The next question is on the technology itself, and the brand which you not so like that much, Boeing. If given a chance to fly on their 737 Maxes again, would you fly or not?
Oh, definitely. I think I would definitely fly without any doubt. Yeah.
Okay, okay. Right. So MCAS is not an issue for you. It is something which you think
I think it's corrected. I think it's well corrected right now. So no problems with that.
Right. So think that you are like hungry as hell. You have ordered your food. What method of delivery would you like to sort of receive your food? A drone delivery is okay for you, or would you like to still have that human touch, ringing that bell and you collecting it from the human? So drone delivery or human-based delivery?
I think I would still go with the human-based delivery. That kind of an interaction is pretty much important. That is what I feel. Yeah.
Exactly, and it creates a lot of jobs at these times.
No doubt, man. No doubt. Yeah.
Right. And last one, I'll put you into a bit of spot out here. So is it reading a book or watching Netflix?
I think for me, it has always been reading a book, because a lot of my friends keep asking me, have you watched this series or that series? But unfortunately, I don't catch up with different series on Netflix. So I catch up with my books. So it's books always.
That's a true reader for sure. Right. So talking about reading, where would all our listeners and all our viewers can read your book? What are the platforms through which your book is available?
I think I'm really glad to inform this to all the listeners out there. 101 Flying Secrets is available as a hardbound copy across the entire world through Amazon in India, through Flipkart, through eBay, through different Kindle versions, Kobo books, and all of that, and even on my publisher's website called notionpress.com. So you can definitely go and see there. My book is always trending in the top 20s within the food, traveling, and lodging category on Amazon. So over the pandemic time, a lot of people have gone ahead and chosen to sit and fly instead of go and sit in an aircraft and fly. Right. So I definitely hope people pick up the book and make themselves aware of different facets and interesting information about aviation.
Absolutely. Thank you, Rakesh, so much. It was an excellent conversation with you. Like always, I have spoken to you, previously to this podcast, and it is always feels great to speak with you, because you come with a lot of inspiration as an individual. Just through your journey, what you has gone through, and now you want to sort of share your experience, not only to the fellow AvGeeks, but to the common traveler as well. So thank you, Rakesh. You are doing a very wonderful job enlightening people within the aviation and also in the greater facets of life. It has been an absolute pleasure to have this podcast with you. Thank you so much for being on the show. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Subhashish. Thank you for hosting me. And I definitely wish you all and all your endeavors happy landings and tailwinds. And I definitely hope to interact with so many other podcast listeners in time to come. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening patiently. We hope this podcast have added value to your time with us. With a lot of great content on the lineup, be sure that you have already followed us. For more exciting content and groundbreaking certificate programs, head over to udanaviationacademy.com. Thank you.